You want me to ask it again?
No, I'm gonna answer it without you. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was answering Evelyn's question about our having made a decision, i.e. the teachers, to keep Carla in this realm. And she transitioned anyway. There was a questions that we had to deal with some of the kids last week at Great and Faith because they truly didn't understand.
You're right.
And while they were not understanding in the beginning, we didn't want to accept it. We meaning those of us who felt like we were, what, making progress, whatever that means. But Carla decided that she was going to leave. Now, ever since she left, it doesn't feel like she's gone. And I think I said it to, I know I said it to some of the teachers, I don't know if I said it to all of them or not, but, well, maybe, did I say last week that I think Matthew, the disciple, made a mistake when they chose Matthias?
I don't remember you saying at the funeral, but...
Matthias made a mistake when they chose him to be the 12th disciple after Judas?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yeah,
Okay.
you did.
That's what I'm talking about.
You did.
They made a mistake and never heard from him again after that. So,
And why is that a mistake?
because they did not accept Judas as being the 12th disciple.
Okay.
In spite of the fact that Jesus said that there will be 12 thrones. In other words, there will be 12, there will be 12, there will be 12 what? Not rulers. I can't put it into words. But anyway, Judas was included, and they excluded. And it wasn't a mistake because they excluded him as much as it was a mistake because Jesus included him. And the inclusion by Jesus was not the same as, quote unquote, the Lord including him. Jesus had made the choices of who he wanted to be teachers. And only he could make the choice about who was no longer a teacher. And he never made that decision. They did. The disciples did. And it was not on them. So, if you do some in-depth study on Judas, you will find that the Catholic Church did Judas an injustice. Jesus never told Judas that he was betrayed him. He never said that. If you actually do a search of the word used as the one who betrayed him, the word betrayal does not appear. It lends itself more to Judas doing what he was supposed to do. First of all, how could Judas betray Jesus when Jesus said to him, "Go do what you have to"? If I betray you, you don't know what I'm doing. If I know what you're doing, or if you know what I'm doing, I'm not betraying you, especially if you agree with me. So it's when we read the scriptures, we read them with the concepts we've been given. We don't actually read the context that's on the page. And we have been given the context over so many years until it's ingrained in us. So even though we are looking for something to understand it, not necessarily looking for something different, but trying to really see what's there, we still are seeing it through the eyes that we were presented with as opposed to the eyes we were given by the Creator.
Well, it does, but instead of us
like
reading,
eyes now, see?
Yeah, but instead of us reading it to the morning, reading for us to become it. We're reading to be just
well, we're doing it academically.
Yes.
And academically is the wrong approach.
Right.
And that's you can help when you get ready. But that's what I say, that we made that decision, and the decision still stands.
Right.
There is no attempt to quote unquote with prejudice. How do you replace a person? You know?
Yeah.
Also, I believe that the disciples did not understand the magnitude of what they had been taught. I don't think they understood what they were actually doing. They were looking at it from a religious standpoint. They were replacing a person, not understanding that the spirit is bigger than the person. Is that there's no need to do that, because that spirit, the essence is still present.
Okay.
And this is one of the things that really helped me to see that. During the course of the week, one of our sisters called me. Mm-hmm. And excuse me, she said that her twin was feeling guilty because she was not upset about Carla's transition. And they called the rest of the siblings, the brothers, and the others, none of them were upset, and now they were feeling guilty about it. So I said to her, the reason you don't feel guilty about it, number one, Carla prepared you, because she taught them all the time. Number two, all the stuff that you've learned since your mom and daddy died make you different than what you are now. But the other thing is, just like we've been taught to be sick, we've been taught the only time that you're grieving is when you fall out in the floor, crying. Can't take it, you know, falling over in the coffin, saying, take me with you. You know, that kind of thing. I look one that dude did that, that preached the time I look. You ought to see him grabbing them folks. You ain't going to hold. But that's what we've been taught to do. So I said to her, would you rather be lying awake at night crying, missing her, or feeling the way you feel now? Well, the way I feel now, well, that's the only alternative. You're either going to be lying you think you ought to be feeling, as opposed to the way that you feel, the experience you have it now. She says, well, you know, it doesn't seem like she's gone anywhere. It's like she's at home, we just don't see her. And I said, she is. It's just not up there in the house, but she is at home. But you can't convince Robbie of that, because on 2 different occasions, the vacuum cleaner came on.
Is what?
The vacuum cleaner. The day after the funeral, he was out on the porch, and the vacuum cleaner came on. Well, no, the day of the funeral. Then Sunday morning, he was getting ready to come to church, and he said he could hear her tell him, like she always tell him, we gotta go, we gotta get out of here, hurry up. And he was poking along and smiling as he was hearing in his head, and the vacuum cleaner came on. He said, okay, I'm gone. But there are people in the congregation who've had those kinds of experiences since since she transitioned over a week ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. So that's the presence, the essence of which I speak. And there is no logical academic explanation for that. There is none. However, there's much proof that it does indeed exist. We can deny it all.
and I see his health. I mean, it's just going down. It's deteriorating, and I needed to hear that from you because I was kind of like getting in my religious mode. Like, my daddy's gonna leave me.
Yeah.
It's not like that I would see him every day anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but just the thought of it. And I know you teach it all the time, but today it really,
I mean,
it really
come on.
soaking in.
I tell you anyway, we can learn all we want, but we don't know how we're going to respond to a given situation until it happens.
We need the experience of it.
And if you cry, if you break down, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not an issue. The question is, how do you get past that? How do you deal with that? How do you handle it from that day
How
forward?
you live with it.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Well, I'm feeling right now that he and I really need to have a sit down talk, and I'll do that on tomorrow.
And
But
that's how you feel. That's what you have to do.
yeah,
I mean, last week, one of my cousins, her mother-in-law died, and my cousin's husband was in Utah, Wyoming, right in Wyoming, Utah, and now he's in Utah. Then he came home to see his mama because she was sick in the hospital. So the wife said, "You need to go see your mama," and he was like, "Well, I'll see her when I come back." And she was like, "No, you need to go see your mama." So we were on the phone. I said, "Well, what happened, Josephine?" She said, "She broke her hip." I said, "You tell me to go see his mama." When old people break their hip, they don't take long. So he went to see her. He went back on the road, and she died. He was in Wyoming, and he couldn't get out because of the snow, so he couldn't come back home. He's okay with that. Now, had he not seen her, that would have been an issue with him. You see what I'm talking about? So the Creator knew that he needed that contact, so he wouldn't be beating himself up for the rest of his life. So he had that contact. Now, even if he had not seen her, with someone talking with him who understands a little bit, at least, about both sides, they could have helped him deal with it. But from the religious perspective, praying about it is not going to get it. It's going to get better than by and by. It's not going to get it. See, I have an issue with people who want to go to heaven. I have a big issue with that. If you really believe that people are going to die and go to heaven, then why is it that you try to keep them here? Why do you try to deprive them of that joy that you say that they're going to have? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. If that's the better place, then why would you want to keep them here with you so they can suffer with you? That part doesn't make sense to me. And I've not had anyone from a religious perspective to be able to explain that to me. It does not. What? My brother said when we were young, he doesn't compute. So, I don't know.
It's entirely up to you, of course, but if I could offer a suggestion, you might consider recording your conversation with your dad. Just because I feel in my own experience of my parents passing, I've kept no record of any of those discussions. And so the guy on the left up there, he has no benefit of that. And there's another phrase I've just taken away from a little movie I saw years ago, which was this thing about a grown man whose father passed away and they had issues. And the comment in the movie was, death doesn't end the conversation.
Yeah.
So the more you can do to resolve, if that's the word, or just communicate. And then it's just the way I'm these days. If it's comfortable for both of you, just think of your children or their children, what they will or won't know about your dad, and if this offers them a contact, it's meaningful. I mean, that's my. If it's not comfortable, but
The two most uncomfortable subjects
Well, I mean, if you're talking about yourself, it's not death so much as you and I fought and blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
You know, you think that's such a private conversation. It really isn't. It's family,
Yeah.
but it's your call.
Two things that's taboo that the church just don't talk about: death and sex. They don't talk about it. They just gloss over it, just like it doesn't exist. And those are the two most important things to understand. If you understand the nature of both of those things, then it's very, very easy for the rest of it to be seen. The difficulty is trying to use earth consciousness to show somebody what spiritual consciousness looks like. It's difficult to show someone or to get them to understand or experience what spiritual intimacy feels like, as opposed to physical intimacy. Because the thoughts of it are taboo. You don't talk about sex in church, because if you talk about it, you don't talk about death, because God is the final one who makes the final decision with death. And when your folk die, and the word of God will get you through it all, and then you end up beating yourself up because you think that you're supposed to be beyond that because the church said that you are, but yet you're not. So now you're putting on this facade, and the kids grow up with the same thing. That is the reason we had the frank discussion. When we talked to the kids, one of the kids' daddy called me and said to me that his son felt better as a result of it. A couple of the children talked about how different they felt because they were confused. But when they heard us talk about how disappointed, how selfish, how egotistical we have been in relationship to all of that, but we had to come to grips with it, when they heard the truth about how we felt, it helped them to get a grip on what they were experiencing. But to lie about it, make them feel guilty about something they have nothing to feel guilty about. It makes them feel uncomfortable. So that's where I am with that. I concluded that Nick there's no doubt in my mind that he was there. His heart was there.
Right.
So, but physically he wasn't supposed to be there. It had to be someone who wasn't. Janice could not have gotten there. Sheldon brought her, so he had to be there. George was not coming at all. He was going to, he said he would call and talk to Robbie, and he called me out of the blue and said, you know what, I can't do it, I'm coming. That kind of thing. So I believe that the balance of energy was there, had to be the way it was. I just believe that. And I don't think that we have begun to see anything of what is available. Because when Kathy talked about the 44, right? And talk about being able to transcend earthly limitations, to experience the spiritual, basically what she was saying. Well, I talked about the guy who laid at gate 30 years, 83 is 11. 11 is gateway. So being able to transcend earthly limitations in order to enter the gate that gives us spiritual experiences. That's the experience that we had and are having. So it seems as though each time an event takes place in our lives, we end up seeing things clearer than we did before. Notwithstanding that on the 21st, Carla was here on the winter solstice. She was here. And her being here, the thing that troubled her more than anything in her body was her mind trying to process because it was not clear after the surgery. But being here on the longest day, the longest night of the year, the darkest night of the year, and then purposing in her heart to be here. And then on the 28th, 7 days later, she transcended. She transitioned. She was here the 21st. The 28th, she left. That says something.
Mm-hmm.
On the religious day of the sun god, she was here. On the religious day of the sun god, she transitioned. On the day that was set aside to remember and reflect on who we are, she was eulogized. So all of these things, nothing happens haphazardly. Everything means something. And all shamans and sages will tell you that when you be careful how you speak about events, because however you label them, that's how they become, or that's how they are. And I have no issues with that. That's what, I got you, Sheldon. That's what Jesus meant when he says, judge ye not, unless you be judged by the same judgment that you issue. All he's saying is, be careful on how you label things. Because however you label them, that's what they are, to you anyway. Got that?
Yeah, I wanted to note and pinpoint a couple things that you alluded to that actually happened, which were very, very powerful and showed a lot of growth. The first one, when you mentioned Carla's sister and her feeling as though she was supposed to feel bad about the occasion, just because that's what she felt like was her expectations. And that's basically the equivalent of the same thing as when you kind of like guilt trip in church. So when the preacher or someone tells you to stand up and praise the Lord like you love him, or let him know that you love him, etc. But what actually was able to happen from you speaking with her was to reaffirm who she is, and so her experience of not necessarily just going off of what was expected of her, but what she really felt on the inside of her, and to feel strong in that, so that could grow further, and she can grow comfortable in that, which is essentially her growing comfortable and knowing her self better, or that gateway of being on that path. With the experience that all of you had with talking to the kids at Greater New Faith, that was very powerful, because it basically did the same exact thing. Not only for all of you being able to come into encounter with the incident, and actually to grow from it and analyze it and see how it relates to yourself, and to understand more of and accept who we are. But also with the kids, was sharing that experience so that they themselves could attach to something that was real and grow from it as well, versus what you were talking about with the lie, and basically starting to build upon something that's not even true or not even real, or something that is foreign from them. And so that in itself was guiding them in the right direction as well, as far as realizing who they are, exploring themselves, so to speak, and the experience and the feelings and the things that they had, but not because of something that someone else told them that they're supposed to feel. So they too grew more and more comfortable in you know, who they are, etc. Not sure if I need to explain further, let me know. Yeah.
Anybody have any questions? So, the bottom line is that the experiences that we had proved to be something that were actually serendipitous. And I'll give you an example. When Audrey embraced Carla on the 21st and poured herself into Carla, The expectation was that that physical body was going to get stronger and be with us. That was the expectation. It wasn't just her expectation. It was our expectation. Was it not? However, we had a serendipitous experience. We were looking for a body and we found much more.
Mm.
We found a spiritual opportunity. We found not a bridge, but we found a sense of someone in a position to encapsulate us, not us physically, but our essence, because they know, or she knows exactly what we were what we're looking for in our desires for this earth consciousness, and now being on the other side, being in the other world, now she sees more clearly and is able to communicate what she sees if she experiencing more so than she would have been had she stayed in the body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I feel that's one of the reasons that Sheldon came upon this brain lady who talked about the brain thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that. I think that's one of the reasons he came across that, because that in itself helped bring a lot of clarity to how we clarity to the essence of our being, and how the physical body and its organs, how they function in concert with the spiritual. So and we have, I know I have anyway, and I'm sure others have experienced that, and did not understand what we were experiencing until after we began to see how it works in concert with each other. I know that it helped me see more clearly the experience that Jesus had with the lady who, quote unquote, touched him in his garment. You know, that in itself speaks volumes. He said, "Who touched me?" Didn't he? He said, "Who touched me?" But she didn't touch the body. So who is the me he's talking about? He's not talking about the garment that he had on. Who?
Nick.
Okay. He's not talking about the garment that he had on. He's talking about his essence, his spiritual presence. That's what he's speaking of. Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say that after I heard about Carla, I began to think about it and then stop thinking about it and just feel what I felt. And I believe it was a very positive feeling. And I was not sad until, after you think about it a little bit more. But overall, it was very positive. And I really believe that she, after she made a transition, was able to see various places in my own spiritual body or energy body where I needed help, and helped me get over some things that I needed to. Because in the couple days after that, my dreams were very intense, and it all had to do with letting go of and overcoming some things that have been that represent blockages in me that I've had for a long time. And it was like for 2 days, I was being symbolically shown what was happening. I didn't see her, but I felt that she was involved anyway. So I think part of what sort of the spiritual essence of what we all are became much clearer to me as a result of feeling that. And I believe she has a sort of vested interest in helping us all do that, because now she is aware of those things that were very difficult to process sort of physically as in thinking about them, but now she is them. And so she has the opportunity to help all of us in the way that she sees that we need it the most. If that makes sense. And it has to do with deeper things than more superficial thought processes. So even if we don't understand it in terms of the thought process or the thinking, it's the feelings that we hold on to at a deep level that prevent certain things from happening in our own spiritual development that have to be dealt with. And so she is in that place where those energies and things exist, and they exist now, but the difference is she can prick us at a deeper level than we can with our intellect. So,
And keep in mind, just before Sheldon, keep in mind that Nick and Carla were the youngest. Nick and Carla, the youngest male was Nick, the youngest female was Carla. Now you're the youngest.
I think so.
Yeah.
She was the youngest at Greater New Faith, though.
Yeah, she's the youngest. She's the youngest at Great New Faith. She is. She's the youngest at Great New Faith, and he's the youngest in.
Yeah.
So it's just so many things that appears to be coincidental that are not coincidental. That's all.
Nothing is.
Nothing is coincidental. See, you cannot believe that there is another world and believe that things are coincidental. You might not be able to explain them, you might not understand them, but nothing is coincidental. Even the things that we wish that we didn't have to deal with, they are not coincidental. And the moment we stop wishing we didn't have to deal with them and deal with them, they end. Because they've done their job. You see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Was that Sheldon?
Yeah.
New York.
The only thing I was going to mention is with what Nick said as far as Carla's influencing us and helping us on levels that you may not even know. Specifically what Nick said is you may not be thinking about it with your conscious or intellectual mind, but you're still being guided and helped. And so just to definitely know that her presence is definitely there, but not only is her presence there as a presence that is familiar, but it is there helping us. Just how the teachers and everyone here, or everyone that's in foundation period, how it's as if we build one another up, and our presence and just our being there period helps us to understand or see things better within ourselves and things like that. How it always seems like we can come together. We come together, for example, on Saturdays, and things that we would have never have thought of that we already knew, we have a better understanding of. And it's like, where does that come from? Mm-hmm. But that same exact thing is happening, but it's happening on a greater level. So I just wanted to say that. And as far as this process that is continuing to go on, how Nick was talking about his dreams, etc. So, yeah.
Well, and also, when I saw Kathy, Linda, when I saw the Greater New Faith family, that helped me out a lot. It just felt so light, just seeing them, or just being with them again. And I think I was longing for the family to come together. I mean, I know y'all had already been together, but just seeing them, and even George, I mean, it just... We really don't realize how much we affect each other, but just being in their presence, just seeing them, it just felt so good, just embracing everybody.
You know what's funny?
What?
Robbie said the same thing about the foundation family.
Really?
Exactly what you're saying. Exact same thing. That when he saw the family from foundation, it was like a burden of weight was lifted off of him.
Okay.
As I said earlier, I don't think that we knew how close we are. If we didn't, we certainly do now. That intimacy that we experience is inexplicable. It's simply that, an experience. It's not an event. that can be explained or talked about. It's an experience. There's no way that anyone could know what I'm talking about unless you experience it. The people in Gaffney are talking about Kathy and that other lady who spoke, how they felt, what they experienced when Kathy and that other lady spoke, and that's what they're.
He got into that game. That thing powerful.
But that's what they got from it. You see?
Yes.
That's what they are seeing. And when they said that, what I thought about was this. The lady who prayed is in the class. She's one of the principal partners in our class.
Okay.
The other people who spoke are connected. The two, anybody can read. But the actual verbal, speaking from the heart was different. And that's what they were talking about. Because they knew everybody else is involved.
But you know what, too, Pastor? When I was at Good Aim, we would go places because the pastor expected. It's like pastor expects us to be there to support that person, that family. But with this, I felt I needed to be there, not for them, but for me. You know what I'm saying? I needed them. I longed to see them and to be with them. So it was a different feeling than from where I came from. It's just that I needed to be with my family. The experience from a spiritual perspective is no different than what happened with the lady who prayed, Kathy, and Kathy Smith, sitting in that room helping Carla transition. What happened when we came together was an opportunity to experience that transition, as opposed to coming together because of you expected to be there, or coming together because you want closure. Mm-hmm. There is no closure. Even when we call it closure, there's no closure. This is always open-ended. Why would you want to close the door on someone who you love so deeply? Mm-hmm. So it's not closure as much as it is experiencing the transition as one. And I do think that experience was accomplished. I really do. So. Any other questions or comments? I mean, Carla, she was not popular in Gaffney. She was not a politician. She didn't hold any position whatsoever other than being a teacher. And she has impacted that entire place. That whole town has been impacted. That has been the talk ever since she transitioned. That's what everyone's been talking about. And one of her sisters had to tell one lady, the reason she didn't want you there because you're negative. See, I'm just going to break it down to you. She didn't want you in her house because you're negative. She said that she didn't want any negative energy around her, and she didn't want anybody pitying her, and that's what you do. That's why she didn't want you there. Any more questions? Then she got the phone. But that's what had to take place. Now, Carla would tell me just like that. But again, I believe she did it on her own. She chose to do it because she pushed everybody away from her. Everybody. And I did not realize literally everyone she pushed away until after things were over. I mean, literally everyone that she was close to, she pushed them away. But not away because she didn't want to be bothered, but distant enough because I think it was twofold. One, she didn't want to be, she felt like it wouldn't hurt as bad, or she didn't want to hurt anyone. And two, if she kept us too close, she would not have been able to transition. Because we wouldn't let it happen. And when the doctors told Kathy, no, she fighting to leave him, we fighting to keep her. In other words, every time that her heart stopped,
Kathy would lean over to her and breathe, and you stop back. Every single time. 5 times. Every single time. And finally the doctor said that. And he was basically saying, let it go. And when they just said, okay, is this what you want to do? Then I'll breathe with you until you take your last breath. And that's what happened. And I told him earlier, I read I read cause of death certificate this week, and it had cause of death natural. Now, that speaks volumes in itself. That everyone who don't know any better believes that she died because of the cancer in her body, but she didn't. She did not. And even the doctor in the beginning thought that, but she did not. She died from natural causes. And natural causes is simply that folk die. They leave, you know? Any questions?
I think that her transition was also like a seed that was, you know, burst, and it allowed an opportunity for other people to be touched with truth. And what better way to transition? What better way to transition than to have truth spread? And what a legacy that even in transition, truth can be spread abroad to people who might not have heard it as soon, because they will hear it.
Yes.
I thought that was so positive.
Well, the Cherokee County Church Authority was there. The moderator was there. And he had no reason to be there. He's not related to her. There are a couple of people in this church that relate to her, but my God, that's everywhere. And he had no real reason to. But he was there. He had to be there. Because authority has to be spoken to. Anyone else? I hope that the words that are being spoken today will help us to see more clearly the necessity of transition. Her transition was no different than Jesus. When he burst forth the seed, then the word spread it everywhere. Same thing here. We're in a very critical time. If you are a student of history, you know that in the 7th century, Islam was the stabilizing force in the world. Christianity was the destabilizing force in the world. Did you know that? Islam was the stabilizing force. And now, both of them are destabilizing. Neither one of them is stabilizing the world. You talk about what happened with the terrorists in France, but what about the terrorists who shot the abortion doctor? What about the terrorists who blew up the thing at the Olympics in Atlanta? That's terrorism, isn't it? Yeah. And they did it in the name of their God, both of them. One is on a broader scale, of course, but terror is terror. It doesn't matter its origin. So if one was stabilizing and the other wasn't, and both are destabilizing, we must be on the brink of something. Of something that's going to bring a sense of comfort and direction to this earth consciousness, this place, not the physical place, this spiritual essence of earth consciousness. There has to be something that's going on that's exposing the underbelly, the ugliness of both religions, and people beginning to see the purity of what was does not feed into what's going on. What I mean by that is, even during the period when the Inquisition was taking place, there were people hidden in places who were speaking the truth and who were searching for the truth. And they were hidden because they would be killed if they were made public. And even now, there are those who are doing the same, but not afraid to speak it publicly. And maybe, just maybe, truth seekers are the ones who cauterize the blood vessels to keep it from bleeding to death. With the stopping the flow, or at least stemming the flow in some way of the utter violence and criminality of religions who do these things in the name of their God. And it's no different. See, when people, especially in this country, look at it, they talk about Allah, and they're too dumb to understand that Allah is Elohim or is God.
Right.
I mean, that's too dumb to understand that. So that is no different than what happened, with the Inquisition. There's no different than what happens in this country. What happened in this country was slavery. Justification for slavery came from the Christian church. And the Ku Klux Klans were Christians who had no issues in the church and killing for the girl. I mean, you understand? Mm-hmm. So both of them are the same. And without a stabilizing force, I do not believe that the destabilization would have been allowed to reach the pitch that it has reached now. I don't think that this world could have stood it if there were not a stabilizing force someplace. If it were one where you save the city. That's what I'm talking about. Now, I believe that we are, if not we are a stabilizing force. Now, and I say that readily and without apology because I don't know anyone else who is. I don't. So I'd say that unapologetically that I believe that we are the stabilizing force. And I've had experiences, as Nick was talking about, with dreams and visions that were so intense that I could actually not only feel them in my body, but I knew I was feeling them in my body while I was still asleep, and I could wake up and go right back to it and experience it all over again. And I was sitting yesterday at the funeral, and this guy was praying, and I'm sitting there and I'm hearing Jesus and Lord and God all being interchanged, and and the Father, all these things being interchanged, and all of a sudden I didn't hear it anymore, and a voice was saying to me some things that you were brought into this earth for such a time as this. I heard the voice clearly say to me that you are one with the Father. Hold on to that. No matter what, hold on to that. And some other things were said, but I've never had that kind of, for lack of a better term, blackout experience while being awake I've had, of course, while I'm asleep, but to be sitting there with, you know, all this going on, because you know, if you're praying, you got all this, you got all this going on. And one guy sitting here, and he visibly not in paying attention to anything, real once in a while, just to bring you to amen, you know, real loud, to the point where your head goes, and all of a sudden, I didn't hear any of that anymore. And I'm sitting there in this other place. So I believe with everything inside of me that the thing that we have been so fervently searching for has apprehended us, has found us. The thing that we wanted, that we want to hold on to, has a hold of us. The thing that we wanted to experience is now, we are the experience as opposed to having an experience. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
I feel that with everything inside of me. I feel that connection because when you know, Ella would ask me every time I talk, how's Carla? Carla would, everything she went through, she would say, make sure that you tell Audrey, you know, things like this. There was that connection, and for that to happen the way it happened, what I'm trying to say is that her spirit became a needle that, or a thread that has weaved a tapestry of light. It's woven into a tapestry so that it's actually individual threads, but yet one. Can you see what I'm saying? Mm. I believe that, and this is something else that I saw, and my intent was to talk about it the other week, and that is the individual, because the lady who did the brain thing, when she said it, it triggered a lot of things inside of me, that I understand the individual I am, the person, you or I am individually, but the essence of the oneness is the spiritual oneness. The I am has opportunity to express itself either as light or as confusion. And whatever we ponder, whatever the I am ponders, that's what the I am expresses. That's the one, and the spiritual is the many. Elohim, one yet many. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm seeing here, and I don't think that these things came haphazardly or out of order. They came in order so that we would understand better what was transpiring in relationship to I am transitioning to become the many. Because by being the many, it can affect every individual by being the many as opposed to being the I am and having an effect on an immediate environment. Mm. So if we can embrace that, if we would embrace that, it is my contention that not only will we see a major change in our own environment or our own attitudes or our own lives, individually and collectively, but we will also see it having an effect on the broader scale of mankind, much broader scale than what we can see with the natural eye or imagine with our spiritual essence. Because we are, regardless of how spiritual we are still limited by our physical, environmental experiences. We're still limited. So anyway, any questions about anything I said? And I hope that I'm speaking, you understand what I'm saying. Because it's important not just to me, but it's important to everyone that we cease being what? I know the word, I just can't find it. It's in there, around it from me. We need to stop being, what is it, when you know who you are, but you don't want to admit it.
Everything?
So nobody
In
wants.
denial.
We need to, well, okay, we need to stop denying who we are. Okay, I'll take that. And really be expressive of who we are and the essence of our being, as opposed to taking a back seat or not desiring to do it. Because when you and Janice were talking about some of the things that were said on Saturday, it just didn't seem like it was stuff that, you wouldn't expect to be said in those. I just saw what I saw, and that's I believe that regardless of where we are, when it talks about always being ready to give every man an answer, you can't be ready to give an answer if you're not the answer. And if you are the answer, you can't pick and choose. Any more than you can pick and choose who you're going to forgive. You can't pick and choose who you're going to teach. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. The student asks the question. The teacher appears with the answer. So the question is, are we willing to put in the appearance of the teacher when the student is asking the question? Or are we so uncomfortable until we feel like it's not time yet? If not now, when? When is it going to be time? And there are those who would take issue with me talking about us being stabilizing force. However, if we were in another part of the world, then we'd have a problem with it. And if we knew someone else who was seeing the things that we were seeing, we would be like, well, we want to see it too. Okay, you do. Now what you going to do with it? It's always seemingly that the other person is doing it, and I wish I could have those experiences, but when you have them, there's always a naysayer to say, why you? Well, why not you? Why not us? Why not me? Why not? If the Creator is not a respecter of person, if the Creator does not differentiate between those who are seeking and those who are not, then all it's saying is that those who are seeking will see it, and those who are not seeking, it's there, it's available. They're just not seeing it because they're not seeking. So it doesn't mean it's hidden from them. It means that they have hidden it from themselves by trying to hold on to something that's not real. And I've said it and I said it again. You cannot explain what's real. You can only explain what's been created, these physical things. You can't explain spiritual truth. You can talk about them. To their origin and see the origin. You can experience it, but you can't see it. Like you can dismantle this thing and trace it back to the materials from which it is made and see the origin of it. You can Google something and find out who did the first one, that kind of stuff. But you can't do that with truth. You can't do that with the light that we are. you cannot even give an answer to, example, if someone asks you, what do you all talk about? You can't tell them because you can't explain it. However, if they ask you a question, you can give them an answer. Not because you so much, not because you're explaining it, but you are speaking about an experience. And the more that we embrace the idea, the concept, that we have been privileged to have these otherworldly experiences, of course, for lack of a better term. We have been privileged to see beyond the veil. We have been privileged to step into the Holy of Holies and experience the essence of what's there. This whole thing about the veil being torn from top to bottom is talking about a virgin womb being open for impregnation. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about the hymen. I think that's the word. That's what he's talking about. And it cannot produce unless it's penetrated. So when the veil is torn, we are the penetrators of the veil. We go in. Why? Because we have to believe that we are the seed in the womb of the Holy of Holies so that we can birth what's real. So we can bring to this earth the light from the other side so that we are not, so that we get beyond this idea of being legacy seekers and understand that legacy means nothing. What means everything is being the essence of the light that you seek. And history books don't write about that. It's not necessary for you to be written about. But what's necessary is for you to be the writer. And the purpose of your writing, the thing that you write on, is the hearts of those you come in contact with. The ones who you feel like treat you the worst are the ones who need you to write. You have to be the really writer. Because if we cannot deal with our daily experiences in a heavenly way, how in the world are we going to be able to deal with the earthly experiences that seems to be destabilizing? How can we expect it to stabilize the world if we can't stabilize ourselves? If we allow things to destabilize us, how can we stabilize everything else? We have to understand that the purpose of an attempt to destabilize us is not to weaken, it's to strengthen. It's to help us to see who we are. It's to bring us to a place where we understand that everything that we come in contact with is either nourishment or calisthenics for the spirit. That is to strengthen, not to weaken. And if we truly embrace each other in the oneness of it all, then nothing can destabilize us. Nothing can break us. Because if I am weak, then Barbara is strong. If Barbara is weak, then Audrey is strong. It just goes down the line. You understand? We are each other's strength. And when old people used to say every tub must sit on its own bottom, when every tub sits on its own bottom, then it began to realize that it is not just a tub alone. It's not the only tub in the world. And when you begin to root yourself in what you believe in, then not only do you understand that you are the essence of who you are, but you also understand that there are others who are rooted in the same thing that you believe. And that's the drawing power. That is the reason people come to you, people seek you out, who you sometimes have no connection with. but they want answers. And if we are not the answers, then who is? I feel like at some juncture, no, I don't feel like it, I know this. At some juncture, all of us are going to have to come together. Not just the facilitators. Yes, we are definitely going to come together because there are some things we have to do in this realm to widen the aperture of light for the influx of light. But both bodies, we're going to have to come together. Not so much come together because the family that pray together, stay together. Not like that. Come together to interact with each other. Come together so that we can experience the oneness that we experienced last week. Come together so that we can truly experience the nature of the many as opposed to the nature of the one. One, yet men, the Elohim. Does that make sense?
I've been feeling that as well.
That's what, we have to do this.
Yeah.
And we are privileged to be, the scripture says that Jesus was the only begotten Son, right? Mm-hmm. Only should not have been there, begotten should have. The same word that says that he's the begotten Son is the same word that's used when Abraham was talking about Isaac. When God speaking to Abraham about Isaac being the begotten Son. So it's only talking about someone who has been purposed or privileged to be a spiritual builder. That's what it's talking about. A ray of light that has been privileged to be a spiritual builder. Someone who takes the substance from the other world and constructs something in this world. We are spiritual builders. Guess what we're building, Janice? A man. We are building the man that refused, man, or to become the one that changed the mind of the one that refused to be who he's supposed to be. We are building a man. When we build ourselves up, each other up, we are building a man. We're bringing Adam to the place where he recognizes who he is. We are saying that the very things that we possess are our enslavers. But when we build each other, when we see the essence of our being, then we begin to see that the things that we have or that has us in bondage are the things that they don't matter. That's why Jesus could walk through a wall, because it doesn't matter. These things are not encapsulated. They can't keep you in bondage anymore because you can see beyond them. That's why it says, seek to be a spiritual builder as opposed to seeking the things of this earth, of this world. All the things that you need to stay in this earth to be a spiritual builder, I'm going to give you that. Just be the builder. Can you see that? Just be the builder that I have brought you here to be. Just be that builder. And then, and when it talks about dominating the earth, it's actually talking about building the kingdom in the earth. It's not talking about a physical kingdom. It's talking about the kingdom of earth consciousness. That word dominate, in Genesis, if you look it up, it's the same word for kingdom in the Hebrew. These are the things that we are missing. And we're missing them because we have been so inundated with a false doctrine that has been brought to us by the children of the universe. And we have to rise above that. And we have to begin to see that the essence of our presence is a method, or is it's a reality that brings change whether we're aware of it or not. What I mean by that is, when you embrace who you are, it doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what you say. Your presence brings about change. We were talking about earlier how, it seemed as though some of the people were waiting for the other shoe to drop last week when I was standing there delivering that message. Like, what are you going to say next? That kind of thing. That's what I'm talking about. When I say we have to be the builders, we have to understand that if we are afraid of dropping the other shoe, who's going to learn? So, anyway, that's where I am. And why I am that you baby also. Any questions about any of this? And I may sound like I'm rambling, but I promise you, I feel like we have stepped into another era. I feel like that. And that has been
several. I don't know if it was last. It was at your house, and we were at a teacher meeting, and we were talking about. I think it was the winter solstice again. We were talking about. Some of us were talking about. I don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
Quote unquote, quote unquote.
I remember that.
And we purposed and we finally came to the conclusion that we're not going to miss it.
Yeah.
So this is what the not missing it
Yes.
is right now, the manifestation of the
Yes,
not missing
okay.
it.
Yeah. That's the it, whatever the it is.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that we are at a loss for words when it comes to the it.
Mm-hmm.
So that we won't be able to label it. Because to label it is to limit it. But just recognize that it is taking place wherever the it is. And it doesn't matter. Trust the river. Trust the flow of the river. It doesn't matter where it carries you. Because wherever you are, He's there also. So it doesn't matter. Just stay in the river. You get in trouble when you grab at the limb and get up on the banks. Just stay in the river. Stay in the lake can't take you any place. The river will. Sure.
Yes. Yeah, so with what you're talking about and going back with something, I don't recall how long ago, but not too long ago, when Nick was talking about in regards to labeling a thing instead of letting it identify itself to you or what it is and how it relates to you and what it has to offer. Automatically, when you do not let it be and try to label it, we automatically limit it, and we limit its potential in changing us, or in how we realize who we are through that thing and that connection of it. So definitely, you don't want to put a label on it to let it be. So even with the whole incident with Carla, we accept, but then we don't stop it. We allow it to be what it is, not say just this is what it is and that's it. Yeah.
Suppose. Go ahead.
And I just wanted to say before we leave that really pay attention, and I will be doing this too. Pay attention to when your ego is holding you back from doing something your heart tells you should. Is really as simple a way as I could put it. And really, and that's something I have to learn how to do. That's something that we all have to begin building in terms of the skill set in us, because that's like reading the blueprint for the it that's supposed to be built, really. So let me just say that. So be aware of how you feel, and if ever you feel the influence of ego, which is to say anxiety, all those things that are out of balance. Learn to put that aside and listen to what's deeper than that.
And what Nick just said is extremely necessary, but it can be tricky. Because I promise you, when I was on my way from Charleston trying to get to Gatlinburg, when I look back at it, that was ego. Because I was not going to let it happen. Even though she wanted it, that's ego. So it can be tricky. It can look like something that is not.
Going back to when you were trying to find that word, I can't remember. It had something to do with, you said, stop being.
I took Audrey's word being now, but that wasn't the word I was looking for.
No, it wasn't.
Part is when you pretend to be, you know who you are, but you pretend that you don't know who you are.
Because what word popped up in my head for some reason was humble, but I thought we were to be humble.
We are to be humble. But what I was talking about was when we know who we are, but we are too something to admit it.
Not modest.
You're modest. Stop being modest. That's the word I want. Stop being so modest about it and be honest with it.
You could almost say falsely modest.
Absolutely, it's definitely falsely modest,
Okay.
and because we don't want nobody to call us arrogant. Yeah, we don't want nobody to call us arrogant, so we being modest about it, you know.
So we'll stop when you stop.
There's always one.
No, but I'm just saying. Because I see that. When you stop, we'll stop.
Oh, well,
And also, I want to say this too. I see we are being prepared for really what's to come. And we just got to get ready. And
okay, TD.
yeah, I mean, just give it to them. But we're being prepared. And it's a journey that we all going to have to just stick together. And if we have to call each other, cry, snot, whatever, we just know that we're going to have to do what we got to do.
I believe that every generation has an opportunity to usher in a new heaven and a new earth. I believe that. When you know what that means, as opposed to what we've been told it means, it doesn't mean that every generation does it, but every generation has an opportunity to do it. The old religion has passed away. That's why there's a new religion, a new heaven, a new earth, a new understanding, a fresh enlightenment.
Well,
You understand where I'm coming from?
Explain a little more about that.
Well, when it says new heaven and new earth, and then it says, and the seas are no more. The new heaven is the reality of the enlightenment that we're supposed to have, as opposed to the light that we thought we had. The earth is a consciousness that is balanced with heaven, the heavenly consciousness, as opposed to the imbalance between this other stuff that we call light. And the seas no more is that religion itself does not exist anymore because it was dead anyway. The sea that exists no more is the Dead Sea.
Okay.
So everything that goes into this religious thing dies. And I don't mean dies to the extent that it can't be resurrected. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
No, I was just going to say, just extrapolating from what you said, if you have in every moment of your being that same opportunity, not be that every generation, so to speak, has the same. It's just an extension of the same possibility that's in you in every instant, right? So it's always been there. The other thing about my sense, when I visualize what you said about religion, it's just that you're saying I don't know how to characterize it as a food kind of thing, but there's a sense that just the crust or the scale, whatever you have over a wound kind of thing, is becomes so thick and hard that it's cracked open. So what's happening is that cracking open
Reveals the wound.
is a new opportunity for truer healing, whatever language we use for it, right? I mean, why do you sort of pull the scale off to let air, sunlight, and everything else? You know? So,
I see the same error that when Jesus was on the earth. You know, it talks about the heavens were shut up, and there was no word. It simply means that there was no fresh light. There was no enlightenment, and it was during a period when men were writing Leviticus and stuff. It during a period when men were writing their own stuff and attributing it to God, and all these damnable things. And here burst on the scene Jesus to say that the Lord that I came to fulfill is the Ten Commandments. That's what he was referencing. All the rest of the stuff he was referencing that. And I see us in an era where opportunity has been presented for us to do the same thing. To usher in a sense of light that's different. Because keep in mind, history does repeat itself. And it's just different players, but it's the same thing. I heard this lady say, when this guy referenced the Inquisition, well, that was back then. We talk about now. You in the 16th century, you can expect anything, and I'm saying, it's the same thing. It's the same principle. It's just a repeat of it. So suppose that we're at the end of an era where we are supposed to be the light that was ushered in, that John said, behold, the Lamb of God. Suppose that's what we are representing at this period of time, simply because people have been afraid to do that. Have been afraid of being called blasphemous or committing heresy. Have been afraid of that. This is, I mean, look at this room. The people, look at this. Look at the people, with the exception of Nick and Janine. Look at where we came from. We heresy and blasphemers is what we would be called, with no one understanding. The ones calling us that don't know what the word means, but they know what they've been told it means. So suppose that the boldness is present, because finally, it's like, finally, there's someone who will say it regardless of the rewards or the consequences. It doesn't matter anymore. With that attitude, and one of the things that I used over the years to get me here is that 100 years from today, it's not going to matter what you thought about me. What's going to matter is what I say. That's what's going to matter. 100 years from today, it's not going to matter what kind of car you drive, how much money you got. Because see, I believe this: if you got money, you're scared to spend it, you broke. I'm serious. If you got money and you won't spend it on anything, you might well not have it. You broke. You got money, but you're living in poverty. I mean, it's crazy. So suppose we are the ones who actually cracked the scale. And since we cracked it, now we see what needs to be done to bring about the healing. And the thing that we see that needs to be done to bring about the healing, we have no clue, but we see it. We see it, not with these eyes, not even with this earthly mind, but we see it. And the reason I know we see it is because we feel it, we experience it. But we can't put it into words. Suppose that's where we are right now. Suppose that's what we are. And suppose for a moment the newness of it is not choosing Matthias. That's the difference. Follow what you see, what you experience, and not what you think ought to happen. It's not calling the teachers together and say we got to vote somebody else. It's not me appointing somebody else to be. It's stand the course. Could it possibly be that if they had not been afraid to leave that upper room and they had not chosen that one to replace Judas, if they just stayed the course and did exactly what they were told to do without being afraid to do it, that things would be different now. Suppose that ball is in our court. Are we willing to stay the course regardless of what's in our face? That's where I believe we are. We just have to stay the course. And maybe I am falsely modest, but I'll make every effort.
What, New York?
I didn't say anything.
Not to be. Okay. Why do you think I would be?
Would be what?
Falsely modest.
I think help not to be falsely modest around him.
Yes, for it.
What do you say?
I said I think I'm helped not to be falsely modest around you. I didn't say anything bad about him, so if either you or he took that as being bad, you were projecting.
No, we didn't take it.
No. I understand what you're saying. Typically Sheldon, but I understand.
I can answer that question in the context of my own, call it self-examination. It's an ego attachment. It's just, there's still a little of that ego in there, because that's a way to draw attention.
I don't want to say it.
I'm just saying it.
No,
But it's okay. I mean,
No.
you're where you are.
What I'm saying is, I'll tell you the reason a lot of things I see I don't say concerning me is because of the arrogance thing. I don't want anyone to attach arrogance to it. The things that I hear, the things that I experience, the things that I see, I hear how easily it is for Nick to talk about his experiences in the other world and what he experienced in his dreams and what he sees. He's not been through that stuff that I've been through. Right. So it's easier for him, but there's no excuse for me not to. He can very well be my example to do this. I received an email from one of the guys who we used to organize with back in the day, and I had been talking about the correlation between the guy, Bill Land, whose funeral I went to in North Carolina, and Miles Monroe transitioning. And he said there's no comparison, because Bill Land was a liberation preacher and Miles Monroe was a prosperity preacher. And my response was that Miles was a prosperity preacher until towards the end. And he became liberation too, just in two different areas. One is talking about physical, politically, and the other is spiritual. So he didn't respond to that. But he sent me an email where this lady had written the book. One of my closest friends, her sister, wrote the book. She lives in Charleston. And in the book, she wrote about her experiences. Her daddy was the president of the NAACP in Lake Providence, Louisiana. How she was riding with him, and the Klan shot into their car. How their house was firebombed. All these things. His friends were killed. And she went through a litany of things that happened. And he sent me that excerpt from the book that she had written. And at the top, he says, "And so many have forgotten." And I sent him a response. I said, "How could anyone forget?" And I haven't heard from him. but I knew what he was saying to me. So, at that period, it didn't matter about ego. We were good at organizing, and we didn't have a problem saying it. We just did it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got into the church, in terms of the preacher, it became a different story. When I talked about stuff I saw when I began the transition, of course, it was, you think you're better than anyone, you think you know more than anyone. And one night I was in a class teaching, and this guy who has very little education asked a question, and I gave him an answer and said to him, if we need to go further, just see me after class because we don't have enough time to delve into it. He said, okay, so we get out of the class. He says to me, he said, Reverend Richard, you're not the man that I have been told you were. He said, I was told that you were arrogant and you didn't care anything about anybody who did not have education. And I said, who told you that? And he said, the moderator. I think that plays a large part in how I feel and how I deal with things. Because he wasn't the only one who said that. That builds a wall. I guess there's a wall. That makes you cautious. Makes me cautious anyway, about the admission or knowing and saying. Now individually, I'll tell you, we talk about it individually all the time. But I just have this thing about that. And I have to get over myself. You're going to be like Sheldon in a minute.
Oh no, I passed all of that to Sheldon. He's me.
All right.
The me that was that I'm breaking from. Good luck, Sheldon.
Pastor, in that, you know, that word, that arrogance.
Say again.
In that word arrogance, would that be more? Because when I look at you, I think confidence. That word arrogant don't come to me for you.
Yeah.
To me, I would think arrogance of a person because of some lack that I be feeling in myself.
Yeah.
So that's more that person's perception because of their lack. So in that, how could that hold you? How could that put that wall there?
Because I didn't see it the way you see
You
it.
don't see it as confidence.
Yeah, that's why. Okay. Richard Jordan.
In my own personal experience, and I do the same thing as well sometimes, and that's why I feel so comfortable with not doing that around him, is that what we were talking about earlier today is placating to how others see you. So many of the times I wouldn't be trying to be arrogant, and I would actually, or do, rather see the other person just as myself, and I see them as having the same amount of potential that I have, etc. I see no difference between us. But the only difference is because I am aware that I can come off as being extremely arrogant to whomever it is that I'm actually communicating to. I am completely surprised, for example, at my internship in different places where I go, where from a material worldly view, I should be the least threatening person that there is. And I'm walking around like not harming anyone, but everyone is completely threatened by me. And I'm like, what am I going to do? What do you think it is that I'm going to do to you? So I do think part part of that is naturally going to come out depending on the person who is observing you, depending on where they are as far as realizing who they are in their awareness. I've dealt with this a lot, and I'm constantly doing exactly as he said, is trying to, I guess, minimize myself, so to speak, to help others feel more comfortable, because the last thing that I really want to do is to have anyone feel uncomfortable around my, in my presence, so to speak. And it just comes through constant, I guess, conditioning. And then I also notice people going the extra mile trying to, I guess, make it a competition between myself and them, and trying to prove themselves instead of just being themselves, as if they feel in some way inferior as well. And it's not a feeling that you like having at all, especially when you're trying to connect to someone and you're trying to let them know or portray that we're on the same level, we're the same. I don't like being elevated. Now, the only reason I will brag about anything is I will brag about stuff with that guy sitting on that stool, is just to annoy him. But anyone else, I don't really want to be lifted up or anything. And let's go, Nick.
And, but it doesn't bother me when I'm preaching.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't. If it comes up, it comes out. It's just when I'm talking about who I am, what I have been told, what I see. But as far as when it don't matter.
Well, Pastor, it's all the people that you cover who experienced that, because I experienced that at work. They tell me, Evelyn, you trying to talk so proper and so, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, so y'all been listening to me. So y'all, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so it's all the people that you cover.
Yeah. So in the future, I will not placate people simply because of what they think their perception of me is. And the me that I'm speaking of is my purpose for being in this earth. And I know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that my purpose for being in this earth is no different than the purpose that Jesus gave me to this earth. I understand that. I accept that responsibility. Okay?
I think false modesty is deception, too. So,
Twisted knife, why don't you?
I'm not saying you have. I'm really thinking about all those sort of preachers who do. It is a way of deceiving people, because it's like you have one agenda here, but your real agenda is something else. So
It's funny. Before Carla had put the tumor off the brain, we'd be talking, and this happened for years. She'd say stuff like, when are you going to readily admit who you are? And I remember when I was at Mount Calvary as a kid, I was like 3 years old, 4 years old. And when I would go to the house, he would say, Mama, heck of Jesus. And nobody ever called me that but him. And she would always say to me, when you gonna stop playing games with yourself? And just admit who you are. It'd be a lot easier. That kind of stuff. So maybe it's time. It is. Hello. Hallelujah.
Y'all went way past what I said, but that's okay. I didn't put any judgment on it, and I didn't say how your ego would deal with it.
Yeah.
Everybody else talked about that, but that just talks about your relationship to your ego. That is not,
that's okay. Yeah, I
didn't put any
that's why I like the way we deal with each other. I like that. Except Michelle, of course. But it helps me. Everyone becomes a mirror, is what I'm saying, for each other. And the only way that I can see that any of us can overcome ourselves or grow or begin to change the idea of having to placate people is to admit it and to have others voice what's been voiced in today. And I do indeed appreciate that. So now, maybe it took this, or it's taking this to get into this place where we are talking about, so that whatever the it is can be experienced. So, anyway. Okay.
Nick had something.
Oh, okay, Nick.
Yeah.
I didn't see his hand.
He does.
Oh, actually, I don't think I did. No, maybe
Poor show.
no, I'm good.
Okay.
Well, I mean, Jamil told us years ago, we're Jewish, we're supposed to argue. It's just Sheldon has embraced this to its fullness.
But only
He's in that state.
Only with me.
No, it sneaks out.
So,
Pretty sure we argued for 12 hours. Pretty sure we argued for 12 hours.
okay, well, my ego says me. Okay.
Maybe Sheldon's real identity is Thomas. You gotta keep you honest and straight.
I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about the scriptures, and I said to him, some stuff he said, and I gave him answers. And I said, explain to me something. If the Bible was not given to us by men who handpicked the book, then why is it that Thomas is referenced in the 14th chapter of John, but the book of Thomas is not acceptable? It is the same Thomas. And this book that Thomas wrote is older than the four Gospels. So why? And he says to me, so what you're telling me is the gospel has not been preached. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Out of all the preaching that you've experienced, none of it is the gospel. None of it is the gospel. It's been an experience that kept us in a place where we would be open to the gospel. And that's, I think, what it was. Keep you in a place where we'd be open to it, because Sunday school teachers in this room, studying, wanting to understand what's in that Sunday school book. You know what I'm saying? I mean, literally studying, knowing that you don't have 15 minutes in your Sunday school class, maybe 20, and then summed up in 5. But that's what they're keeping us open to that. And everyone who's connected was brought into the earth to be connected. Everyone was brought into this earth to be connected, to do this. And I accept it. And I believe that you accept it, but you cannot accept it reluctantly. You have to accept it and embrace it with all of your being, with everything inside of you. I will walk on the edge and risk being pushed over before I walk backwards, because there's nothing for me to go back to. Everything is in front of me. That's where I am. Okay.